Chapter 191 Goodbye of a Century. Hearing the absurd words coming from the person in front of him, Hudge thought there might be an issue with his hearing. Easy? How could the final exam of the Lumina Chrysalis Guild be easy? As a 9th-tier guild with the authority to directly recommend people for admission to the Origin Arcana Institute, their test was far from easy. It was easier just to pass the regular trial than to follow the path offered by them. Pardon? Hudge asked. Ahem, I mean I would like to suggest making the exam more challenging, Maximus repeated, feeling embarrassed by his previous words. Is this for your children? That's right, these kids have been growing more arrogant lately. The students of this batch are indeed talented, Hudge also nodded. Reviewing the profiles of each student and conducting statistics, Hudge noticed a significant increase in the number of talented students. Besides the family members of the apex sovereigns and prominent families, there were also individuals like Maximus who had their children study at their guild. It seemed that these people had been working hard recently. What do you think? Maximus inquired. We do need to increase the difficulty of the exam, Hudge finally agreed. However, I'm not sure if Lord Maximus has a specific suggestion. What about setting the exam's difficulty to match that of the official student trial? This? It's not appropriate, Lord Maximus. If we do that, there wouldn't be anyone who can pass. Hudge immediately rejected the idea. If no one passed, it would imply that Lumina Chrysalis Guild's education had failed. After all, their students were less than 100 years old, merely beginning their journey. Usually, people who took the official student trial were over 1,000 years old. Moreover, Lumina Chrysalis Guild primarily taught foundational knowledge shaping these children's talents. They focused on basics, cultivating their way of thinking, survivability, and, most importantly, their willpower. This would benefit them more than teaching advanced knowledge that they could just learn later. I mean, simply make the difficulty level the same as the official student trial, Maximus explained. There's no need for elaborate missions and objectives. To pass the trial, they don't need to rely on professional knowledge, strength, and skills. The trial will only test and grind their willpower. I see, understood, Hudge nodded and fell into thought. The two discussed further details and specific aspects, including setting 2 passing criteria. Those who barely passed could become part of the institute as seekers, while those who passed the test normally could immediately become official students. This can easily be done by reporting it to the dean, and with the corresponding difficulty of the test, there should be no issues. Just leave it to me, I will make sure to humble these students and bring down their arrogance, Hudge promised. Then I look forward to it, Maximus smiled in satisfaction. A week later, at Maximus Manor, his children, Ella, Amara, and Zoe, were talking happily as they waited with a touch of boredom for the final exam. The exam took place in the virtual world, so there was no need to go outside. Originally, Amara and Zoe were still not eligible for the final exam. Still, thanks to Maximus's relationship with Hudge, he managed to open a back door for them. Anyway, if they pass, that means there's nothing more that the Lumina Chrysalis can teach, he thought. As for Lux, he was still a little kid with nothing but money. Are you not nervous? Maximus asked. Don't worry, Dad. We've already watched the previous exams, they're not that difficult, Max comforted. You're just too worried, Dad. We're already so big, Sam muttered. Dad is just concerned about us, Lily tried to defend Maximus. That's right, Dad just loves us too much, that's why he's worried, Lila happily said and came to hug Maximus. Right, Dad, Lila said cutely. You're indeed my little babies, Maximus melted and kissed her cheeks. Dad hugged, Serene and Syra became a little jealous and also hugged him. Mwah! Mwah! How is your little baby's comforting kiss, Dad? It's very effective, Maximus smiled and pinched their noses. They were already over 10 years old, but they were still as clingy as little babies. What about Lydia? Don't you love Dad anymore? Maximus faked tears for his shy daughter. No, I will love Dad forever. Lydia summoned her courage and said. Then what about my kiss? Oh, Lydia kissed his cheeks shyly. Her cuteness also made him melt. What about Lily? Is Lily so big now? Maximus muttered, looking for Lily. Don't worry, Dad, I won't forget you. Lily came from behind and hugged him. Really? Maximus looked behind and picked up Lily. Lily had already grown up, nearly to his height. However, picking her up still resembled a scene from a picture, as if he were holding her just like when she was a baby. Really, Lily said seriously. Lily will also be in father's heart forever. How about you, naughty brats? Would you care to give your father a hug? Maximus said forcefully. He was like a sweet little dad to his daughter but to his sons. Maximus couldn't bear to act the same way, especially Liam and Max, who were already his height. If it weren't for the hint of immaturity, one might think they were just brothers. Do you need a kiss too? Max asked playfully and hugged his father. What a naughty brat! Maximus muttered as he ruffled Max's hair. Hee, I thought you wanted my kiss too. Go away. It's the other's turn, Maximus said, pushing the cheeky brat aside. Dad, Nathan said as he briefly hugged him. You have indeed grown into a fine young man, Maximus praised, glancing at Zoe. Be careful in the trial, he added, patting Nathan. After Nathan, he didn't have to wait long before Sam and Luke tackled him. Dad! Dad! More cheeky brats, Maximus smiled as he hugged them back. We will miss you, Dad, Sam said. They didn't know why, but seeing how their father acted, they had a premonition that it would be a long time before they would meet again. Don't worry, everything will be fine, Maximus smiled wryly. Their premonition was right, their exam this time would last exactly a century. To train their will, time was the most important factor. Living only for over a decade, Maximus couldn't help but worry about them. In the trial, they would only have each other. Now, it would be the last time they could see their parents for a century. Is there something wrong, Dad? Liam couldn't hold his curiosity any longer and asked. The exam this time is different, Maximus shook his head and didn't say more. However, the others also got some. They realized that the difficulty of the exam would be more difficult, which made them solemn. Don't let their carefree attitude fool you, as they trained like crazy outside. Sky even advised them to slow down a little due to their craziness. But how could they? Just the thought of disappointing their parents was heartbreaking. They didn't really underestimate the exam. It was just a show for their parents, so they didn't worry needlessly. Maximus also knew this, but he still did his best to increase the exam's difficulty regardless. Growing up, his children rarely meet any obstacle, everything is easy for them. Without enough tempering, the height that they can reach will be limited. It's okay for him as he had a system, but for his children, he wanted the best for them. Don't worry, Dad. You have to trust us. Liam stood up and livened the atmosphere. Look at Neo, there isn't even a hint of worry on his face. Liam pointed. Isn't he just sleeping? Maximus's mouth twitched as he looked at Neo, who was still snoring as if having a beautiful dream. It just means there's nothing to worry about, Liam said confidently. All right, no need to comfort me, I know you can easily pass this exam. I'm just worried that you'll miss us too much. Hee, maybe it's you who will miss us, Dad. Liam laughed as he put his arm on his father's shoulder. You've really grown up, Maximus also put his arm on his son's shoulder. Who do you think is more handsome, me or Dad? Liam shifted the topic and asked. Of course it's Dad. Duh. You're just a little boy who hasn't grown up yet. Lily teased, making Amara chuckle. With Maximus and his wife's genes, their children were undoubtedly handsome and beautiful. However, comparing Maximus and Liam was like comparing day and night. Maximus had a distinctive aura that elevated his appearance to another level, while Liam just looked like a pretty boy. Hey, who said earlier that I'm more handsome than Dad? Liam muttered, looking at Amara. Seeing this, Amara turned her head shyly. You just coaxed Amara into saying that. Lila immediately spilled the secret. Oh, brother is really domineering, forcing others to do what he wants, Max added. As they joked, the atmosphere returned to normal. His wives also came into bond with the children before the trial. Maximus told them earlier about the details of the trial. There was also Denise and Stefan, Zoe's father. They came to say one last goodbye before the children's century-long journey. Chapter 192 Famine World. A few hours later. There are only a few minutes left before the exam, Maximus reminded, seeing that they were still playing happily. Oh, they nodded sadly. Just do your best, no need to force yourself, he reminded. We will pass this test like the previous 9, Max said arrogantly. I believe in you. After saying their last goodbyes, they entered the virtual pod one after another. This was an advanced pod that could allow them to stay in it for as long as possible. Furthermore, there was also a soul array, a safety mechanism that prevented the collapse of the soul. Take care in the virtual world. We will see each other again after the exam. As soon as the countdown finished, their souls began to vibrate at a unique frequency, sending them into the virtual world. Famine world.
Huh?
W water.
Tea thirsty.
On the ground was a group of malnourished and dehydrated children. Around them, people lay on the ground, seeking shade from the sun and resting.
Where's this?
Liam resisted his thirst as he contemplated their situation. As he pondered this, a virtual panel appeared in front of him. Final exam. Mission, survive 100 years. World introduction. Tapping on the world introduction, his mind suddenly flooded with information. A while later, Liam smiled wryly as he acknowledged their precarious situation. This world is a wasteland without any extraordinary powers. There is no blood, mana, and soul power here. An ancient world without extraordinary abilities is not much of a problem. However, this world is currently facing a once-in-a-millennium catastrophe. The sun flares and the water begins to dry up. This world is approaching its end, becoming a desolate place devoid of life for thousands of years to come. What's worse is that their bodies are those of normal children. With malnutrition and dehydration, they can barely stand. Assessing the situation, Liam calms down as he looks around. Seeing his brothers and sisters and the 3 girls, Liam sighs in relief. Fortunately, we're still together. This is one of the mechanisms that Maximus suggested. If these students were alone in this world, the chance of passing would be nearly impossible. In this exam, students were grouped based on their relationships with each other and randomly spawned in this world. While he was assessing their situation, the others also figured out their situation and began conserving their energy. What should we do, brother? Max asked, his voice cracking. Get water first, otherwise we'll die of thirst, Liam said. Based on his estimate, their bodies can only last 1 or 2 days without water.
Where do we get that?
Max asked. Looking around, all he saw was barren land, without even a hint of vegetation. Condensation, Liam answered. Condensation?
Without magic, how can we do that?
Sam licked his parched lips as he asked. Perhaps we can help with that, Lily said, looking at Lydia and Amara. The 3 of them studied natural alchemy. A branch of the alchemy of study the in and out of nature. Although this is a different world, there should be similarities that they can find to solve their problem.
Are you?
Max asked excitedly. We will see.
What do you need, sister? Leave it to me.
Max was already energized. Let us plan for a while. Condensing water in this weather is quite difficult. Lily, Lydia, and Amara began to discuss how to condense water vapor for drinking. Assessing the world, they noticed that its principle is almost the same as the Ethereum realm. To condense water vapor, they need to remove heat from the water, thereby turning it into liquid. To do that, they dug deep into their knowledge to create a condensation device. It should be something that they can create and work under the principle of this world. Fortunately, they often experiment using unlimited materials, so their hands-on ability is not bad. A few hours later. On the smoothed ground lay a complex blueprint with dense lines and grooves. For a normal person to make it, they would need precise machinery.
How is it, Luke? Can you do it?
Lily asked. They had no machinery at the moment and could only use their bare hands and primitive tools. Among them, Luke, who was a mechanic, had the most dexterous hands. It should be doable, Luke furrowed his brow as he examined the blueprint.
Sam, can you help me a little?
Luke requested. Sam was also a part-time mechanic, so he should be able to assist him. All right. Brother Max, Brother Nathan, I also need all kinds of stones. Preferably round and lightweight stones. There is also wood, any quality is fine, it just needed to be big. Luke began specifying his requirements. The girls, on the other hand, were either preserving their energy or gathering information. By now, they already knew that the original group was initially preparing to head south. They were informed that the famine began in the east, spreading to the south. By now, the east was already a desolate land without any living people. From the lowest social class to the wealthiest merchants and nobles. All of them were marching south. Status was irrelevant at this point, only water that could sustain life mattered. As for their original identity, they were children from an orphanage that had been abandoned due to the famine. That's why, except for them, there were also a bunch of children with them, ranging from 1-year-old to over 10 years old. The oldest among them were Liam and Lily, who were 16 years old. Their dean and other adults had already left them in order to escape and survive. As for how a bunch of children could survive to this point, it's because the famine had only reached their location a few days ago. However, if they didn't take action, they would die in just a day or two. At night, Luke and Sam managed to finish 3 condensation devices the size of a fist. "Sister, this is the only thing we can do," Luke apologized. "This is more than enough." "Thanks for your hard work," Lily smiled and cheered them a little. Using crude materials and their limited strength, it was already a miracle that the two managed to create the condensation device. "This is our duty, sister." "Now it's time for you brothers to work," Lily said, looking at Liam, Max, and Nathan. "What do you need?" Liam asked. "You need to throw this in the sky," Lily said, handing them the fist-sized condensation devices. "How fast?" Liam quickly understood and asked. "About 100 kilometers per hour and 1,000 revolutions per minute." "Would it be better if it's faster?" Max couldn't help but ask. "You don't need to overexert yourself, this speed should be enough to fill the device with water." Oh, Max was a little disappointed, thinking he could show off. Soon the group reached an open clearing without people. Their town was almost empty, so there was a lot of open space. "Throw it quickly, we're too thirsty," Sam and Luke, who had just done the physical labor, urged. "All right." The 3 took their positions, gripping the condensation devices in their hands. They focused the strength of their whole body at one point, clenching every muscle, and then threw the condensation devices. Before the devices left their hands, 2 of their fingers acted like precision machines, giving the condensation device a faster spin. Swish asterisk. Swish asterisk. Swish asterisk. The group watched the condensation device as it flew through the air, hoping that it would work. Their prayers seemed to be answered, as the ball flew and acted like a magnet, vacuuming all the water vapor it passed. The tiny holes and grooves of the condensation device seemed to defy physics as it stayed in the atmosphere for a few minutes using its rotation. Inside the condensation device, there was also complicated machinery, filtering and pressurizing the water vapor, turning it into liquid. At last, the reserve container began to be filled with clear liquid water, making it heavier. Thud asterisk. Thud asterisk. Thud asterisk. The condensation device fell accurately into place. With curious and excited expressions, they took the condensation device and opened it. Inside was charcoal wood with carvings and grooves. Before opening it again, they took out a container. With a prop, a fist-sized amount of water came out, bringing smiles to their faces. "We have water. Brother, we did it," Sam said excitedly. "It's thanks to our 3 sisters who thought of this," Luke didn't take the credit. The others beamed with smiles as they finally had water. Although it took almost all their strength just to throw the condensation device, it was enough to ensure they would not die of thirst. With the good news, the 3 began to throw the condensation devices again into the sky. However, due to their weak body, Max and Nathan only managed to throw another one before collapsing, while Liam, with a bit more strength, threw 2 more. As for Sam and Luke, after creating the condensation device, their energy was already depleted. As for Neo, he was sleeping at the orphanage. The girls also didn't have much strength. If they pushed their malnourished body to throw the condensation device, maybe they would not die of thirst but physical exertion. Chapter 193, Famine World 2. Looking at the liter of water in front of them, they sighed. Even with all their efforts, the water they got can only afford them a few sips. "Don't be too sad, this is only our first day," Lily comforted. Returning to the orphanage with the container of water, they saw other children looking at them with hope. "Can we share the water?" Serene said as he held Lily's hand pitifully. "Of course, we will share the water," Lily smiled. They couldn't bear to see these children die in front of their eyes either. Furthermore, earlier when they are gathering material and information, these children also help. They were also pretty clever, not asking any questions. Liam also assessed them earlier, seeing that they had no problem with their behavior. "Thank you, sister, you're so good." Come, call the others, and let them have a sip of water." Soon, the children at the orphanage finally had a taste of water after a few days. Tasting the sweet water, they felt content. Although they were still hungry, it was bearable. That night, these kids slept comfortably, thinking of a brighter future. As for the brothers and sisters, they could hardly sleep that night. The hunger and their weak, aching body, especially the thought that they would need to stay here for a long time, weighed them heavily. What they didn't know was that their situation was already quite good. The other examinees, on the other hand, barely hung on or had already quit. There were also lucky and skilled ones who were able to secure water. Some ruthless examinees even drank the blood of humans to survive. Just the first day revealed the cruelty of the test. The next day, they were greeted by the scorching sun, feeling their parched throats.
Huh? When will this end?
Max complained as he slowly got up. His body still ached from overexerting himself the previous night. Don't dawdle, we still have a lot to do. Liam also got up. Although his body also ached, his expression remained the same. Even Nathan already got up earlier to scout around. There was only Max who complained like a spoiled child.
Oh?
What do we do now, brother? Find food and a place to stay. So we're heading south?
That's right.
Soon, they woke up one after another. After knowing they were going to leave for the south, they began to pack all the useful things in the orphanage. With the help of a large group of manpower, they did this in just a few minutes. Seeing that there was still a lot of time, they created a decent carriage using the dismantled pieces of the orphanage. Unfortunately, it was a little small, not enough for all of them to fit. After placing the useful items, there are only 1 to 5-year-old children that can fit in the carriage.
Is that all?
Liam asked as he tallied all their belongings. This should be enough, the others also nodded as they double-checked. Then we only need a destination. Neo, it's your turn, Liam said, rousing Neo from his sleep. Since yesterday, Neo has been fast asleep, conserving energy. When awake, Neo reviewed all the information they found. From the basic geography to the place's political structure, Neo didn't pass by anything he could get a hold of. They were also lucky that there was an abandoned library in the town where they were. Reading all of this, Neo just needed to flip the books as they were imprinted in his mind. I've already calculated it. Southwest, 160 kilometers, there should be a place to stay there, Neo muttered as he went back to sleep. Neo was a divinator. Neo had chosen this profession because it was the most leisurely one. A divinator is a bit different from a seer. A seer can directly see the future, but one can't control what one will see. A divinator, on the other hand, predicts what will usually happen in the future using all the available information. Furthermore, a divinator can work even in the absence of mana. After compiling all the information they had, Neo calculated the place where they could find hints of vegetation and thriving animals. The place also needed to be close and somewhat hidden so that others couldn't find it. After finishing their preparations, they rested and waited for the next day. They also refilled the water container with another liter of water. If they weren't pressed for time and lacking materials, they might have even created a launcher. Unfortunately, they still needed to eat or they would die of hunger. The next day, they began to march after ensuring that they hadn't left anything behind. Other refugees who were also marching looked at them curiously. Looking at their juvenile faces and a group of children, they stood out from the group of refugees. Where did these kids come from? They should be from an orphanage. Hey, it's quite pitiful. I don't know if they could survive. You should worry about yourself first. It's just this damn famine. Hey, look at their carriage, it seems convenient to use, a man noticed as 2 children pulled the cart effortlessly. Maybe the previous people from the town forgot about it. Oh, the man said, but his eyes didn't leave the mobile cart filled with greed. As they marched, the man managed to persuade 2 others to help him steal the mobile cart. Doing it himself was not feasible. Although the other side was only a group of children, they had more in number. Such a convenient thing, how can it be left to children? At night, after walking 15 to 20 kilometers, the brother and sister rested. They scouted the place and set up a makeshift tent as Nathan took the others to patrol and watch for potential threats. As for eating, they can only resist their hunger until they find food. Their location was already to the point that no hint of greenery could be found. From the bark of the trees to the grass, they were all dried out. Otherwise, they can take it out and process it to have something to fill their stomach. Around the bonfire, the group reminisced as they looked at the fire. This exam is not easy, Lila complained as she rubbed her blistered feet. My legs are so sore, especially my smell. I can't take this any longer, Gela, who was originally a spoiled princess, nearly teared up. No, you don't smell bad, Max comforted as he massaged Ella's legs.
Humph, you only say that because you're smellier.
Ella teased but smiled regardless. Yes. Max just nodded and continued his task. But by the way, Liam, what's your plan after finding food and stuff? Amara asked as she poked his side. Make the group stronger and survive, Liam said simply. Making the group stronger meant enhancing their equipment to better use their skill set. After all, they couldn't survive a century if they did all the physical labor. Medicine was also necessary. Surviving a century was nearly impossible without maintenance. In their current state, full of malnutrition and physical exertion, living 60 years was already an achievement. As for survival, Liam predicted that the famine would last for centuries, so they needed to be prepared. Serene, sing us a song to cheer everybody up, Lily requested. Serene was a life ballad who could influence others with her voice. Although without magic it wasn't as effective, it was still better than nothing.
All right.
Serene acquiesced happily. As they relaxed by the bonfire, 3 men slowly crept up to their camp. What these 3 men didn't know was that behind them was Nathan, who was as silent as the night. Being a shadow assassin, Nathan was in charge of the vigil. Nathan had already seen these 3 people during the day had bad intentions. He didn't want to cause a commotion during daylight, so he planned to deal with them at night. Little did he know that they would deliver themselves to his doorstep. Thud**. Jumping behind the 3, 2 of his feet precisely hit the head of 2 men, rendering them unconscious. His other hand clenched into a fist, sending the 3rd man the same way. His remaining hand acted like a support, allowing him to land softly on the ground. All of this happened in an instant that they didn't even make a sound. Clean these people up, Nathan instructed Sam and Luke, who had just arrived at the scene. Right away, brother. Nathan nodded, continuing his patrol. Nothing could harm his brothers and sisters while he was on watch. While the group rested, most of the examinees were eliminated. Not finding water for 2 days became a death sentence, removing them from the trial. There were also many who passed by doing anything they could. Although many of them couldn't stomach drinking human flesh, they had no problem stealing water. Many examinees even managed to join larger groups with complete supplies. With their knowledge and skills, subduing some nobles and wealthy merchants was easy. The night continued until dawn began to replace it. Chapter 194 Steal Food. 5 days later. Ugh. Opening their eyes, they couldn't help but groan. Seeing the refuges around them already finished packing. They also got up and quickly packed up. Their movements were already mechanical, without much complaint. All of them were as thin as skeletons. Without eating for about a week and only having water in their stomachs, they were bloated like pregnant women. According to their pace, it would still take a week to reach their destination.
Brother, I found it.
Nathan muttered to Liam. Finally, we can eat something, Liam's eyes lit up. Although he could still hold it, he couldn't bear to see his siblings and the other children endure hunger. A few days ago, they had planned to rob food from other people. However, seeing that they were also pitiful with little food, they didn't bother. After a lot of discussion, they planned to rob some nobles or wealthy merchants passing by. After consulting with Neo, they adjusted their course a little bit and finally found someone.
How's the catch?
If we rob all of it, it's enough for a few months, Nathan said emotionlessly. Just get a week's supply, enough for us to reach our destination. Are you sure, brother? Nathan asked with a frown. Such a soft approach made him puzzled. If it were not for his compassionate brothers and sisters, Nathan might have already robbed some civilians to fill their stomachs. Do you think this test is just about surviving? Liam asked coldly.
Isn't it?
Then you're wrong. According to Neo's divination, surviving for a century is just the bare minimum. Furthermore, what do you think Father will think when he sees this? I see, then I'll get a week's supply. Nathan understood and didn't ask further. As he was always scouting, he didn't join much of their discussion, so he didn't know about Neo divination. He also forgot that their exam was being recorded and could be watched by their parents. Although he is a bit cold-blooded, he still doesn't like to see his parents disappointed. As long as you understand, Liam nodded and patted him. At night, together with Nathan, Zoe, and Lila, was hidden in the darkness. There were also other people a little further away from them, responsible for transporting the supplies silently. Looking at the noble and his guards eating and drinking happily, Lila and Zio couldn't help but drool. Not eating for about a week, such a smell was tempting. Hold on, take out the sleeping powder that Sister Lily made, Nathan warned. I know, Lila nodded impatiently and hurriedly spread the sleeping powder around the air. Lily created this sleeping powder using her knowledge of natural and biological alchemy. As for materials, of course, they were stolen. Although they didn't dare to steal any food, the materials they needed were still possible. With these materials, aside from the sleeping powder, they also managed to upgrade their carriage. Now it has a suspension device that can move with just a push on any flat terrain. There is also a launcher for the condensation device, so they didn't need to exhaust their strength just for water. Because of this, they could hold off their hunger. Otherwise, just having a sip of water would make them collapse long ago. As for the covetous eyes, they disappeared every night. Their group was already a famous one that no one could afford to provoke. Soon, the sleeping powder slowly took effect as the noble and his guards began to sleep deeply in the night. "Let's go!" With Nathan's order, Lila and Zio excitedly sprang into action. "Rice, hee, let me take a few sacks," Lila muttered as she tried to drag them. Using all of her strength, the sack of rice barely moved. "That's too heavy for you," Nathan said, effortlessly putting the sack of rice on his shoulder. "Just one is enough." "But a few more wouldn't hurt?" Lila looked pitiful. "Brother Liam ordered it," Nathan said as he transferred the sack of rice to their transport station. "Humph, stingy," Lila pouted. Looking at the meat jerky, her eyes lit up and quickly picked it up. This time it wasn't that heavy, so she easily held it in her hand. Smelling the tempting aroma, she couldn't help but gulp. However, thinking of her siblings and the children from the orphanage, she held herself. Going to their transport station, she noticed Zoe holding oil, salt, and various seasonings. "You sure picked specifically." "Hee, I want to cook us some delicious meals," Zio smiled. With her passion for food, she had been studying gastronomy with her auntie Erica. Although she mainly specialized in pastries and sweet things, she also knew a bit about other foods. "Then I want to taste it after we come back," Lila said, licking her lips. After going back and forth to get enough supplies, they returned to their camp. Looking at the supplies coming in, the children from the orphanage smiled widely, their eyes lighting up. As for where the food came from, they didn't care. They just thought that their brothers and sisters were awesome. "How about we eat something first?" Lily suggested, seeing that they couldn't take their eyes off the food. "Yay! You're really the best sister. I will stuff myself to death today." The group cheered, a wave of joy washing over them. With Zoe's leadership and the help of others, they quickly prepared a meal. The tempting smell began to spread, sending waves of misery to the people around. As their stomachs grumbled, they looked around to see whose bastard's idea it was to cook such a tempting aroma in the middle of the night. Seeing that it was the shadow group, they quickly fell silent. This group of formidable teenagers and children called themselves the Shadow Group. Managing a group without a name was inconvenient, so Liam and the others decided to call themselves the Shadow Group. They even engraved their family insignia to their carriage to make it feel like home. At the camp, each child got themselves a wooden bowl filled with soup, rice, meat, and preserved vegetables. Taking a sip filled them with energy as they moaned in comfort. Pots full of food were quickly exhausted by the hungry children who licked every residue they could find. Unfortunately, their stomachs were still empty and still wanted more. "Enough, eating too much will cause diarrhea," Lily advised. The amount of food for each of them had already been calculated by her, ensuring that it could satisfy their hunger without causing problems. Oh, the group sighed as they went back to sleep. Anyway, they could eat it again tomorrow. It was better to sleep now so they could reach tomorrow faster. Deep into the night, they unconsciously smiled as if dreaming about their bright future. A week later, they finally reached the place Neo had divined. After walking for over about 200 kilometers, the land finally showed some vitality and greenery. When the hungry refugees saw this, they immediately sprang into action, looting everything they could find. From puddles of water to roots and grass, anything edible was quickly picked up. In just a few hours, the place that was showing some vitality quickly became a barren land. Fortunately, the place Neo had divined is not exactly at this place and was hidden. The group rested in place, waiting for the night to go into the place that Neo had divined. "Lila, scout the place," Neo said, "and see what route we can take," Liam ordered. "All right, brother." Lila's eyes lit up. She was a treasure hunter, and every treasure hunt was like a game to her. Furthermore, with enough food supplies, they had already recovered some of their strength and had more energy to spare. Even Sam and Luke had so much energy that they created more carriages. Now they could all preserve their energy as they traveled, taking turns pushing the carriages. The brothers even pondered creating a steam engine or some mechanical machine. Unfortunately, without metal and various tools, they could only dismiss it. As for the children of the orphanage, Lydia, Serene, and Syra were teaching them basic knowledge. As part of the shadow group, bearing their family insignia, being ignorant would bring shame to them. Nimble like a monkey, Lily ran from tree to tree looking for the place Neo divined. As for the specific place, Neo couldn't calculate it, he only knew the rough direction. Even then, Lila looked around excitedly, as if playing hide and seek. Other people, seeing Lila doing dangerous stunts, were a little shocked, wondering who that energetic lady was. Lila didn't care and continued to look around the place. Finally, after looking a few kilometers, Lila saw some unusual place. A rocky mountain range that looked like a natural formation. With her treasure hunting instinct, Lila immediately concluded that it was the place she was looking for. Hee, let's see what treasure are you hitting. Chapter 195 Promised Land. Going around the Rocky Mountain range, Lila confirmed that it was indeed a naturally formed hidden array. A Rocky Mountain range hiding a paradise inside. I found it. Lila muttered excitedly, finding the entrance. Going up a steep path and treading for about an hour, she finally saw what was inside. A paradise in this world, with animals drinking at the lake, a roaring waterfall, and greenery covering the ground. Lila felt as if she was in a different world. In about half a month in this world, Lila had only seen cracked ground and dried trees. Even the bit of greenery earlier was full of dried leaves, surviving only with some puddles of water. Now in front of her was a complete ecosystem with everything needed for life to survive, from animals and plants to water. Furthermore, it was so hidden that it took her an hour to get there, walking up a steep entrance. I should tell brother quickly, Lila muttered excitedly. At night, after Lila told the group about what she found, they became excited. If the place was really as Lila described, then they could probably settle there for a few years. Let's go. Seeing that other people were either resting or sleeping, the group began to walk carefully. Seeing this, others thought that they were finding a place to stay for the night, so they didn't bother much. Some also thought that the shadow group had found something, so they followed silently. After a few hours and kilometers of walking, they finally reached the Rocky Mountain ranges. Around them was a desolate rockfield where you wouldn't think there was a paradise inside. As for the people following them, they were eliminated by Nathan. They wouldn't show mercy when it came to their safety, as they might stay there for a few years. Even the traces left by them were erased or disguised. Where do we come in? Liam asked Lila. Follow me. Soon, they reached the hidden entrance that Lila had found. Seeing the tight and steep entrance, they frowned. I guess the carriage can only be disassembled, Liam decided. Leave it to us, brother. You should come inside first, Luke said. All right, we'll be back later to help you, Liam nodded. Packing out all their cargo in the carriage, they slowly walked toward the place. Guiding the children so they didn't slip or fall in heavy baggage, the journey took longer. Finally coming inside, although it was dark, the moon's reflection from the lake and the roaring waterfall still made them excited. Even the tired children seemed to be energized as they looked around. Is this place real? Wow, so much water. Did we finally find the promised land, told by Sister Lydia? Yes, this must be the promised land. Sister Lydia would not lie. Does that mean we'll never run out of food? It should be. After all, it's the promised land. The children talked happily as they walked around the place. Liam and the others also scouted the place, looking for a spot to set up a temporary camp. According to Lila, there were no dangerous animals in the area, so they didn't worry much about the children. After setting up their camp, they came back to the entrance to help Luke and the others disassemble the carriage. A few hours later, after all the work was done, they set up tables of food to celebrate. Eating until they were full, they couldn't help but hiccup. So what do we do now? Max asked. Wait until we grow up as we upgrade our arsenal, Liam straightforwardly said. They were still little kids with weak strength. Even though they could control their strength very well, unleashing stronger power, they were still weak in the traditional sense. In the Ethereum realm, age wasn't a problem as they had mana and everything. Their bodies were impenetrable and invulnerable, and they could do anything they thought of. Here, they only had normal, untrained bodies that were susceptible to all diseases. Furthermore, a little physical exertion can send them to bed. Even with their skill sets and knowledge, they couldn't do much. Oh, then what do we do? We developed the place. Half a year later, the place they named the Promised Land underwent a world-shaking change. First, the source of all life, water. After assessing the source and quantity of water, they reinforced the place to prevent it from drying up. With the sun blazing hot, if they weren't careful, the water would quickly dry up. The solution they came up with was to make the place cooler. By tweaking the Rocky Mountain Range's natural formation, using natural alchemy and a bit of engineering. The flow of air was processed by the Rocky Mountain Range before entering the Promised Land. Now the place became a few degrees cooler than the outside. Then there was the source of food, the lifeblood that kept them alive. With a lot of biodiversity in place, Lily, Lydia, and Amara created a fast-growing crop they called Promise Crop. This crop was not only delicious but also rich in protein and various nutrients. The problem, however, was its growth conditions. Besides needing a lot of water, it also required synthesized fertilizer. Within a short time, that was all they could do. The animals were also quickly domesticated, providing them with a stable source of meat, milk, eggs, and honey. Earlier, when they found that there were bees, they even celebrated for a few days. As for the person responsible for food, it was Zoe with the help of a few older children. It may seem easy, but with limited ingredients and cooking for such a large group, it was one of the hardest tasks. Due to the deliciousness of the food Zoe made, the other children sometimes call her Mommy Zoe. Nathan, who was patrolling the Promised Land, was a little jealous. Of course, he didn't show it, he just let Zio cook him special dinners from time to time. As for Serene and Syra, who had free time, they were teaching the orphanage children basic knowledge and fighting skills. After all, they were still over 10 years old without much physical strength. This was the best they could do. As for Neo, well, he was sleeping while he looked into the sky from time to time. Neo reasoned that he could also get information from nature, so the others didn't bother. As for Sam and Luke, a mechanic and a submechanic. After finding an iron and coal deposit in the Rocky Mountain Range, they went wild and created a crude mechanical workshop. With it, they were finally able to create a mechanical vehicle. No need for manual labor like pushing, just heat and water were enough. The mechanical vehicle was only their first-generation product. Their goal was to create something that could run solely on the energy of the sun. Unfortunately, Max, Lila, and Ella, who were responsible for scouting, still hadn't found enough materials. For now, they could only create a few gadgets to play with, like the mechanical gun that Liam used for self-defense. Liam already left the Promised Land, going to the nearest city within their base. The famine in this world was just beginning to spread. So there were still many functioning cities and kingdoms within a few hundred kilometers to 1,000 kilometers to the south. Urok City was the closest city to them that had the complete resources that they needed. Liam left their base to collect information and various supplies. They couldn't just stay in one place and hope for everything to work. They still needed to interact with society for various other needs. Using the mechanical vehicle, Liam was able to travel back and forth regularly sending supplies. In Urok City, inside a newly opened tavern, Liam read a book as he jotted down important information. "Boss. Not good, Sylvester family is causing trouble in the tavern," a man said, interrupting him. "Is that so?" "It seems that my previous warning was not enough," Liam said coldly. Coming to Urok City a few months ago, he decided to open a tavern. With specially brewed drinks by his sisters, his tavern quickly became popular. However, this popularity came with danger. Nobles and wealthy merchants began knocking at his door, collecting protection fees and demanding the formula for the drinks. How could Liam agree to these ridiculous terms? Using the mechanical gun created by his brothers, he silently assassinated some of these groups as a warning. After that, it seemed like these people got the message and stopped bothering him. Who knew that after just a few months, some Silverder's family that he didn't know of came knocking on his door? Exiting his office, he saw the ones causing trouble were a group of muscular armored guards, along with a seductive witch. As for why he called her a witch, it was because of her vulgar clothes and overwhelming perfume. If it were not for his manners, he would have scolded this witch to immediately get out of his face. "So, it's you, the owner of this tavern," the witch said. "What do you need?" Liam said coldly. "Hee, my family, the Sylvester, have taken a liking to your tavern and would like to invest in it." "And then?" "And then you can be a concubine of mine," the witch said obsessively. Such a handsome boy is rare, how can she resist it? Just seeing Liam's cold and frowning expression, she immediately decided to adopt this pretty dog.